Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. May I first of all congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Hove, in securing this debate. I was very pleased to be able to support him in my capacity as chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Global LGBT Rights, which now numbers over 80 members of this House and the other place. And it's timely that on International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia, we should be talking about the importance of promoting LGBT rights. We last had a debate in this place, initiated again through the Backbench Business Committee, which I thank for allowing this, on the 26th of October. And I then spoke about the fact that we live in two worlds, a world where great progress is being made on LGBT rights in some countries, and yet at best we are standing still in others, and at worst we are going backwards. And I think it's important to understand what the reasons for that are. Just since then, at the time, on the 26th of October, I pointed out that in a really short period, in 16 years, 25 countries had passed same-sex marriage legislation. Since then, Australia has become the 26th, significantly following a referendum of the Australian people, which by a large majority found that people were in support of that legislation. So progress on same-sex marriage in so many countries, and yet reversal, where we see that in Bermuda, where same-sex marriage had been brought in under the auspices of their Supreme Court, it has now been reversed by democratic decision through populism in Bermuda. And it is a warning for us, it's a warning for this place, that we cannot be complacent about LGBT rights, or for that matter human rights, and they constantly have to be guarded against. At the time, I raised the situation in Russia, and I urged the government to press the Russian authorities to say what had happened to their investigation on the treatment of gay men in Chechnya, where there has been appalling brutality, torture, arbitrary detention, and even killings. What has happened? Recently, the Russian government has flatly denied that their investigation has produced any results at all. They have simply denied that, what happened in Chechnya took place. And there is therefore a need for scrutiny and for continuing pressure on those countries for exposure of what is happening, and we have to be ready to raise these issues at the diplomatic level. In country after country, I'll give way to the Honourable Gentleman.
I thank the Honourable Gentleman for giving way, and indeed I've heard that testimony first-hand about Chechnya from activists here in this Parliament. Would he agree with me also that we need to look at the situation in Northern Ireland? It's obviously not comparable to Chechnya, but would he welcome the efforts that have been done by my honourable friend, the member for St Helens, in pushing forward the issue of bringing Northern Ireland into line with the rest of the United Kingdom?
Yes, I strongly agree with the Honourable Gentleman, and I'm just going to come to that. Still on the global front, there are other countries where the situation is going backwards as well. Indonesia is another, where under state auspices we see calls for criminalisation, calls for cures for homosexuality, raids on private spaces, and all of this is making public health outreach more difficult, which is interfering with HIV/AIDS programmes. It's of great concern to those who are campaigning for the relief of HIV infections, and the infection rate in Indonesia has increased fivefold in Indonesia over the past decade. Now we have the authorities in Jakarta, the parliamentarians, considering a bill to criminalise same-sex conduct. I could go on, Mr. Speaker, with my list. I could talk about what's happening in China or in Zambia. I know my honourable friend will, should he be called, talk about what has been happening in Lebanon. Let us try and look on the bright side. And I think the government should be commended for the stance that it has taken on these issues. And only recently we saw the Prime Minister make a very strong stance at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. We still have a situation where the majority of Commonwealth countries criminalise homosexual conduct, covering therefore a majority of the population of Commonwealth citizens, and the apology which the Prime Minister offered and the willingness to work towards decriminalisation was a powerful statement. The government can do so much. And it needs to be cognizant of the importance of maintaining pressure. I therefore welcome what the Foreign Secretary said today. He tweeted that standing up for human rights, including LGBT rights, is an integral part of the Foreign Office's work. Societies where people live freely attract world-class talent, business investment, and are more stable and prosperous. And I welcome the work of the Foreign Office in supporting LGBT groups through our diplomatic missions, through our embassies and high commissions on the ground. Many of our ambassadors and high commissioners do strong work in this area. We need to see more consistency. We need to see more embassies and high commissions offering the support that the best do. And that is a message that we should carry to the Foreign Office. The government also needs to be aware that there are domestic issues still to complete in this country. This is not all about what other countries should do. The Honourable Member mentioned the issue of Northern Ireland. It is almost certainly the will of this House that the Marriage Same-Sex Couples Northern Ireland No. 2 bill passes, and it should be allowed to do so. It is not the government, I understand, that is standing in its way. There is still a situation where hate crime is a problem in this country and indeed is increasing. There are still issues with LGBT asylum seekers, and above all there are issues with trans people, and the consultation on the Gender Recognition Act should proceed. Mr. Speaker, these are important issues. We have made enormous progress in this country, but there is work still to do.